Florida metros have spent the last 2 years sitting at the very top of the national lists for one thing nobody wants to lead: overvaluation. A widely cited study from a Florida university tracks how far home prices in a market have run above their own long-term trend line, and town after town in this state has ranked among the most overpriced in the entire country. But here is what they are not telling you. A bubble is not the same thing as a market about to give way overnight. This is not a prediction that 2026 is going to look like 2008. The real risk is quieter and more personal than that. It is the risk of buying into a town at the exact moment the price has floated farthest from anything real underneath it. There is a number the listing never shows you, and I call it the premium. The premium is the air in the price. It is the distance between what a home costs and what the town beneath it can actually support. The local wages, the local jobs, the rent a real tenant would pay. In some towns, that premium is small and earned. In others, it has gotten enormous. And those are the towns you do not want to overpay into right now. So here are 10 Florida towns where the premium has gotten dangerous, the places I would avoid buying in this year. And before anyone says this is just doom for clicks, understand the opposite. If you have been priced out and waiting, a stretched premium is exactly the thing that eventually has to give. Number 1 is the town that has literally topped the most overvalued list in America. Stay to the end. Number 10 is Springhill in Hernando County, and Springhill is the clearest example in the state of a town whose price ran miles ahead of its paycheck. For decades, this was the definition of affordable Florida, a quiet bedroom community north of Tampa where working families and retirees could buy a simple block home for very little. Then the boom found it. Buyers priced out of Tampa and out of the coast poured north looking for anything cheap, and prices here climbed at a pace the town had never seen. That is the mechanism that makes it dangerous now. The homes appreciated, but the jobs did not. Springhill is still largely a commuter and retiree town with modest local wages. So the typical household now spends a punishing share of its income just to carry a house that, a few years ago, would have cost a fraction as much. When the price of a home detaches that far from what the people living there actually earn, you are not buying value, you are buying the premium itself. The human cost is the family that stretched to buy at the top and now finds the budget impossible the first time the insurance or the property tax climbs. And here is the quiet part. The people most likely to overpay in a town like this are the ones moving in from outside, because they are comparing Springhill to the prices they left behind up north, not to what the town itself can support. To a buyer from a high-cost state, it looks like a bargain. To the local economy, it looks like a number nobody here could ever earn. Springhill did not get more valuable, it got more expensive, and those are not the same thing. If I were hunting for inflated premiums, I would start right here. Number 9 is Ocala, the horse country boomtown in Marion County, and Ocala is where pandemic momentum turned a calm inland town into one of the hottest markets in the country almost overnight. People discovered it could be done. You could sell a small place up north or down south, move to Ocala, pay cash, and pocket the difference. And for a while, that wave lifted prices relentlessly. The mechanism is that the wave was made of outside money, not local income. Ocala's own economy is built on agriculture, logistics, and service jobs that pay modestly. So once the flood of cash buyers slowed, the price had nothing local holding it up. The premium here was built almost entirely on momentum, and momentum is the first thing to leave the room. Now inventory is climbing and the easy appreciation has stalled, which means a buyer paying today's price is paying for a boom that has already peaked. The human cost is the recent arrival who bought near the top expecting the climb to continue and instead watches the market flatten beneath them. For the buyer who has been patient and waiting, this is not bad news at all. A premium built on momentum is the kind that eventually hands patient people an opening. But for the person buying today at yesterday's peak price, it is the worst possible timing. Ocala is a lovely place to live. It is a risky place to overpay. If I were weighing a purchase here, I would be very careful about which year's price I was being asked to pay. Number 8 is Palm Coast in Flagler County on the Northeast Shore, and Palm Coast has been one of the single fastest growing towns in America, which is exactly the problem. Growth that fast is almost never matched by income that fast. The town was built and rebuilt around a simple pitch, newer homes in coastal proximity for less than you would pay in the bigger beach markets, and builders answered by throwing up subdivision after subdivision. The mechanism is supply and premium arriving together. Prices climbed on the growth story while builders kept adding inventory, and now the town carries both an inflated price and a steady pipeline of new homes competing with every resale. Layer on the insurance reality of anywhere near that coast, and the cost to actually carry a Palm Coast home has climbed right alongside the sticker. The human cost is the buyer who paid the growth premium only to find the next phase of the same community listing for less. And growth itself can be a mirage, because a town that grows by importing buyers from more expensive places imports their price expectations along with them, not the local income to sustain those prices once the influx slows. A town can grow in population and still be a bad place to buy if the price grew faster than anything supporting it. If I were watching for a premium built on a growth headline, Palm Coast is on the list. Number 7 is Clermont in Lake County, just west of Orlando. And Clermont shows how the spillover from a hot metro inflates the towns around it. As Orlando prices climbed, buyers pushed outward into the rolling hills of Clermont, and the town went from a quiet citrus community to a sprawl of new subdivisions almost overnight. The mechanism is borrowed heat. Clermont's premium was never really about Clermont, it was about being the cheaper alternative to Orlando, and a price built on being cheaper than somewhere else is fragile. Because the moment the somewhere else softens, the discount logic that justified your price disappears. Add the commute, the new construction still being delivered, and the carrying cost of a larger, newer home, and the math gets heavy fast. The human cost is the family that bought the Orlando dream one county over, at a price that only made sense while Orlando itself kept climbing. When you buy a town because it is the affordable version of a hotter town, you are really just buying the hotter town's premium at a delay. And there is a second trap baked into towns like this. The homes are mostly large, newer, and amenity-heavy, which means the carrying cost is high in every category at once. The insurance, the taxes, the association dues, all sized for a house built to impress rather than to be affordable. If I were looking at Clermont today, I would ask what happens here if Orlando cools, and the answer is not comforting. Number 6 is Winter Haven in Polk County. And Winter Haven matters because it sits in the exact metro that has been ranked the most overvalued in the entire country. Polk County, the corridor running between Tampa and Orlando along Interstate 4, became the great middle ground of the Florida boom, cheaper than either big city and marketed hard to every buyer who could not afford the coasts. Winter Haven rode that wave with theme park adjacent investor money and a flood of new building. The mechanism is a premium with no anchor. The jobs along this corridor lean heavily on warehouses, logistics, and tourism, work that does not pay the kind of wages that justify the prices homes now command. So the gap between price and paycheck here is among the widest in America. Buyers paying today are paying a number the local economy simply cannot back. The human cost is the household carrying a payment built for a salary the area does not actually offer. And accuracy matters here, because Polk County is often sold to newcomers as the smart, undiscovered middle of Florida, when the data says the opposite, that it is one of the most overpriced corners of the country relative to what it produces. Winter Haven is the picture of a town that got expensive without getting richer. And if you have followed me this deep into the list, you are paying closer attention than most people who read the headline and scroll on. So if this is useful, the subscribe button is right there. Number 5 is Port Charlotte in Charlotte County. And I want to be precise here because accuracy matters. This is Port Charlotte, the large inland community, not its smaller coastal neighbor, and the two are very different markets. Port Charlotte was built decades ago as a sprawling grid of affordable lots aimed at retirees, and the recent boom inflated it the same way it inflated every cheap Southwest Florida town, with a rush of buyers chasing space and value. The mechanism is overvaluation meeting the insurance wall. This stretch of coast took serious storm seasons recently, and the cost to insure a home anywhere near that water climbed to numbers that eat into any value the low sticker price once offered. So the premium here is double, an inflated price on top of a carrying cost that keeps climbing, sitting in a town built for budget buyers who have the least room to absorb either. The human cost is the retiree who bought for affordability and discovered the insurance renewal alone can rival the old mortgage. This is the cruelest version of the premium because it targets the buyer with the least cushion, the person who chose a budget town precisely because money was tight, and then watched both the price and the cost of keeping the home climb out of reach together. A town built to be cheap becomes the most dangerous kind of bubble when the price goes up and the cost of keeping it goes up at the same time. If I were ranking exposed premiums, Port Charlotte sits high. Now stop for a second, because this next stretch is the part that matters most. If you have followed the premium this far, you are already paying closer attention than most people who skim the bubble headlines about Florida and move on. Whether you already own a home in this state or you are planning the move from somewhere colder, the final 4 towns are where the price has floated farthest from anything real, where the most buyers are about to learn what overpaying actually costs. This is the part you came for. Number 4 is St. Cloud in Osceola County, southeast of Orlando. And St. Cloud is the newest face of the Orlando spillover premium. For years, this was a small, almost rural town on the edge of the metro, and then the builders arrived in force, turning pasture into master-planned communities marketed to everyone priced out of Orlando proper. The mechanism is a premium built entirely on new construction demand. When a town's value is driven by builders selling brand new homes to incoming families, the price holds only as long as the builders keep finding buyers. And the moment that pipeline slows, the whole price structure wobbles because there is no deep older market underneath to set a floor. St. Cloud's wages and local economy never justified the prices the boom produced. They were justified only by the next buyer paying more than the last. The human cost is the family that bought the newest phase at the highest price, only to watch the builder open a new section nearby and effectively reset the value of their street. A town that is almost entirely new is a town with almost no floor. If I were watching for a premium with nothing under it, St. Cloud is exactly that. Here is something worth having if you own property anywhere in Florida or you are weighing a move here. Every town worth buying into and every town worth avoiding in this state is now in one place. 40 Florida towns, 20 rated to buy and 20 rated to avoid, in a single guide called the Florida Buy and Avoid List for 2026. You can get it through the link in the description below. But stay right here, because the number 1 town on this list is the one that has literally topped the most overvalued housing market ranking in the entire country. And the reason it earned that crown is the part almost nobody explains correctly. Number 3 is Jacksonville. And Jacksonville earns its spot because it is enormous and a premium spread across a market. This big touches an extraordinary number of people. For years, this was sold as the affordable big city of Florida, the place where you got more house for your money than anywhere on the peninsula, and that reputation pulled in transplants and investors by the thousands. The mechanism is a premium hiding behind the word affordable. Prices here climbed so far and so fast that the old affordability advantage has largely evaporated, while builders kept adding huge volumes of new homes across the sprawling metro. So you have rising prices, heavy new supply, and an insurance market that has tightened across the whole state, all in a city so large that when it softens, it does so at a scale the headlines cannot ignore. The human cost is the buyer who came to Jacksonville specifically for value and quietly paid a premium anyway because the value story aged out faster than the marketing did. A town can keep its cheap reputation long after the cheap prices are gone, and that lag is where buyers get hurt. If I were measuring a premium by how many people it touches, Jacksonville is the heavyweight. Number 2 is Orlando, and Orlando is the one most buyers assume is untouchable, which is exactly why it belongs this high. The theme park economy feels bulletproof. The tourists always come back, the cranes never stop, and that confidence is precisely what inflates the premium. The mechanism is a price propped up by 3 things that can all soften at once: tourism spending, investor and short-term rental demand, and a tidal wave of new apartments and homes built on the assumption that growth never pauses. When travel tightens, when investors stop buying nightly rental homes, and when all that new supply lands in the same season, the price has a lot further to fall back than the postcard suggests. The human cost is the buyer who paid the confident price for a town everyone swore could not slow down. The most dangerous premium is the one nobody believes is a premium at all. If I were avoiding overpriced certainty, Orlando is at the top of that list. And that brings us to number 1. I told you it had literally topped the most overvalued housing market ranking in the country. And I meant it because everything we have talked about, the price detached from wages, the boom built on outside money, the new supply with no floor, all of it converges in one place harder than anywhere else in Florida. Number 1 is Lakeland. The quiet city in the middle of the state, sitting on Interstate 4 between Tampa and Orlando, has repeatedly been ranked the single most overvalued housing market in the entire United States. Understand what that actually means. It does not mean Lakeland is about to give way tomorrow. It means that, measured against its own long-term price trend, the typical home here costs far more than history says it should. More air in the price than almost any market in America. That is the mechanism, and the reasons stack up. Polk County became the affordable middle of the Florida boom, so buyers priced out of both big cities flooded in. Builders answered with enormous new supply, and the local economy, heavy on warehouses and service jobs, never produced the wages to justify what homes now sell for. So you get the widest gap in the country between price and the fundamentals beneath it. The human cost is the household paying a Tampa or Orlando level number for a town whose own economy cannot support it, and discovering that when the premium fades, it has the most ground to give back. Let me be honest with you. Lakeland is a perfectly good place to live, and this is not a forecast of disaster. It is a warning about which year's price you are being asked to pay. If any Florida town has the most air to let out of its price, the data says you are looking at it. So here is the thread that ties all 10 together. Not one of these towns is a bad place to live, and that is exactly the trap. They are the towns where the price has floated farthest from the wages, the jobs, and the real demand underneath it. The people who get hurt this year will be the ones who paid the inflated price for the inflated story. So tell me where you stand. Drop a comment with the Florida town you are in right now, whether you own there or you are planning the move, and what your last insurance renewal actually did to your budget. And tell me which town you think I got wrong. I read every one of them. If you are the kind of person who believes the real story of this market is the one the headlines keep getting backwards, hit the subscribe button right now. Because next, I am flipping this entire list over and showing you the Florida towns where the price still makes sense. The places where you are paying for value instead of AIR. And number one on that list is a town most buyers drive straight past without looking twice. We will see you in the next one.